February 1945. Outskirts of Seoul, Korea. The American soldier's extended hand made the young Korean woman flinch. After 3 years in a Japanese comfort station, she had learned that hands brought only pain. Yet this hand held something impossible, a wool blanket, clean and warm, offered with eyes downcast in respect. For Kim Soon-hee, age 19, the gesture contradicted everything the Japanese officers had drilled into the women. Americans would torture, sexually harass, and mutilate them upon capture. Americans were animals, beasts with no restraint. Instead, this soldier, barely older than herself, offered warmth without demands. Across liberated comfort stations that winter, 239 Korean women confronted a reality that demolished Imperial Japanese propaganda about American savagery. They discovered soldiers who maintained physical distance, who provided food without expectation, who summoned female nurses when possible. These simple gestures, blankets offered without snatching them back, meals served without violation, medical care administered with gloved hands, systematically dismantled years of psychological conditioning more effectively than any counter-propaganda could achieve. The mathematics of compassion were being written in calories and cotton, in bandages and bread, revealing an American military ethic that rendered Japanese claims of protection not noble necessity, but calculated deception. What began as stunned disbelief would evolve into complete psychological reorientation. The liberation moment. American forces advancing through the Korean peninsula in early 1945 encountered scattered comfort stations, military brothels where Korean women, some as young as 14, had been forced to service up to 30 Japanese soldiers daily. Military police records documented 19 such facilities discovered between January and March 1945, housing between 7 and 28 women each. These women, who had been recruited through deception about factory work or forcibly taken from villages, expected execution upon discovery. Imperial Japanese officers had reinforced this expectation daily. Medical records from the 38th Field Hospital note that many women attempted to hide or flee when American forces approached. Several had been told they would be shot by retreating Japanese rather than left to American barbarity. Instead, within hours of liberation, they encountered American field rations. These K rations, which American soldiers routinely complained about, contained treasures: canned meat, crackers, powdered eggs, instant coffee, sugar, and chocolate. Women who had subsisted on rice gruel and occasional vegetables treated these emergency meals as feasts. According to military records from February 1945, the 7th Infantry Division issued double rations to the liberated women, many of whom weighed less than 90 pounds. The systematic feeding and medical treatment of these traumatized survivors began immediately, though its psychological impact would only be understood later. A military physician later testified to Congress, "We expected women broken beyond recovery. Instead, we witnessed remarkable resilience once basic needs were met." This taught us about trauma recovery in ways medical texts couldn't. The blanket distribution across liberation sites provided intensive education in American humanitarian principles. The U.S. Army's Quartermaster Corps, operating at unprecedented efficiency, allocated wool blankets, standard issue 66 inches by 84 inches olive, drab 3.5 pounds, to each survivor. For women who had slept on bare floors or thin straw mats, often without sufficient covering even in winter, these dense wool blankets represented impossibility made tangible. The materiality of compassion, weighing 3.5 pounds, became their first evidence that Japanese descriptions of Americans had been fabrications. The comfort station's dimensions measured precisely 24 by 16 feet, divided into 8 cubicles, each measuring 6 by 4 feet. Each cubicle contained a straw mat, a wooden bucket for sanitation, and thin cotton partitions offering nominal privacy. Military engineers who documented these structures noted their deliberate design for maximum efficiency and minimum comfort. Within these mathematical confines, young Korean women endured systematic dehumanization for up to 5 years of captivity. The Japanese Imperial Army's operational records, captured in 1945, revealed the clinical precision of the comfort women system. Regulations stipulated usage periods of 30 minutes per soldier, with officers granted longer sessions. High-ranking officers received morning appointments, while enlisted men utilized the facilities from noon until midnight. During combat operations, facilities operated continuously. Army Medical Corps documents specified weekly health inspections focused exclusively on preventing venereal disease transmission to soldiers, not treating women's injuries. Daily caloric intake for comfort women averaged 1,200 calories, primarily rice, 150 grams, barley, 100 grams, and occasional vegetables. Protein appeared rarely, small fish portions twice weekly. Documented monthly rations included no meat, dairy, or fruit. By comparison, Japanese soldiers received 2,400 daily calories with regular protein supplements. Medical records from liberation examinations revealed severe malnutrition among 83% of survivors, with average weight 40% below standard for height and age. Lee Young-soo, 17 at liberation, later testified, "The hunger was constant, but it became background to other suffering. We stopped discussing food after the first year. Our bodies adjusted to deprivation." Military physicians documented vitamin deficiencies in 91% of survivors. Beriberi, scurvy, and night blindness commonly reported. Dental examinations revealed advanced periodontal disease in women as young as 18. Control mechanisms extended beyond physical constraints. Women received no news from outside, no contact with families, no access to calendars or clocks. Correspondence seized from Japanese officers revealed deliberate isolation strategies. One memorandum stated, "Temporal disorientation enhances compliance and prevents escape planning." Women lost track of years, months, even seasons. Survivors reported measuring time only by changes in soldier uniforms or weather patterns visible through small windows. Physical violence functioned as routine discipline. Medical examinations documented specific injury patterns. Circular cigarette burns, 73% of women. Systematic scarring from bamboo canes, 88%. Healed fractures of fingers, ribs, and orbital bones, 62%. These injuries followed documented patterns consistent with calculated control rather than random abuse. Psychological trauma manifested in documented symptoms: dissociative episodes, selective mutism, persistent tremors, nightmares, and hypervigilance. The Japanese military's internal economic accounting valued these women with cold precision. Ledgers recovered from comfort stations revealed fee structures, profit calculations, and depreciation schedules for the women themselves. New arrivals commanded higher prices, with values systematically reduced based on time in service. Medical records noted women retired when their physical condition deteriorated beyond profitability, typically after 2 to 4 years. These retirements frequently meant execution or abandonment in unfamiliar territories. Park Soon-hee, who survived 3 years in a northern Korean comfort station, described the mathematical certainty of their existence. "We calculated everything. How many men before bleeding would start? How many days until a beating would heal? How little food would keep us conscious? We became human calculators of suffering." Her testimony, recorded by Army intelligence officers in April 1945, described the precise measurements of survival within a system designed for exploitation until death. The mathematics of suffering, calculated in minutes, grams, centimeters, and yen, created the psychological foundation that would soon confront its antithesis in American humanitarian response. The 8th Field Hospital tents stretched across 2 acres outside Pyongyang, white canvas structures organized in precise rows. Inside Tent C, designated for comfort women survivors, American nurses established intake protocols unprecedented in military medical history. Within 24 hours of liberation, each woman received a standardized assessment: weight measurement, physical examination, nutritional evaluation, and preliminary psychological observation. These records, preserved in National Archives files 194A through 194F, documented the systematic approach to recovery that would shape modern trauma response. The initial meal served to survivors followed military dietitians' recommendations: rice porridge, 240 grams, with powdered milk, 15 grams, and sugar, 10 grams, providing 412 calories of easily digestible nutrition. Women who had subsisted on starvation rations received carefully measured increases. Day 2, 550 calories. Day 3, 700 calories. By day 7, 1,200 calories with protein supplements. Kitchen logs recorded specific meals, portions, and reactions, noting that many women initially saved portions of food, hiding bread or dried fruit beneath mattresses, behavior consistent with prolonged food insecurity. Captain Sarah Miller, head nurse of the 8th Field Hospital, recorded in her official report dated February 28, 1945. These women require specialized rehabilitation, unlike any previous war victims. Their physical recovery proceeds at expected pace, approximately 0.5 kilograms weight gain weekly, but their psychological recalibration to safety operates on a different timeline. Each clean blanket, each regular meal, each respectful interaction systematically contradicts years of conditioning. Communication presented immediate challenges. The 8th Field Hospital had 3 Korean-speaking personnel among 147 staff members. Military records show emergency requisition of 8 additional translators from intelligence divisions, arriving March 3, 1945. Even with translation, cultural barriers created complications. Medical records note multiple instances of women refusing gynecological examinations, hiding injuries, or becoming non-responsive during questioning. By mid-March, protocols adapted. Female-only medical teams, Korean cultural consultants for meal planning, and adjusted examination procedures emphasizing patient consent. Clothing distribution logs document each woman receiving 2 cotton dresses, 1 wool sweater, 1 coat, 2 sets of undergarments, 1 pair of shoes, and personal hygiene items. Women who had worn the same tattered clothes for years touched these new garments with disbelief. Choi Min-ji, aged 18, told her translator, "I kept waiting for them to take everything back. When they didn't, I understood something fundamental had changed." This moment of realization, that gifts without obligations existed, appears repeatedly in survivor testimonies. Daily routines established in the processing centers introduced predictability that functioned as psychological medicine. Morning meal, 7 a.m. Medical checks, 9 a.m. Group gathering, 11 a.m. Afternoon meal, 1 p.m. Skill sessions, 3 p.m. Evening meal, 6 p.m. Women who had lived without time markers beyond soldier arrivals now oriented themselves to clocks and schedules designed for healing rather than exploitation. Military psychologists noted improvement in sleep patterns, reduction in startle responses, and increased verbal communication correlating with routine establishment. Red Cross records indicate regular deliveries to these processing centers: 5,000 blankets, 2,000 hygiene kits, 4,300 clothing sets between February and April 1945. These supplies, allocated without reduction to standard military operations, represented resource prioritization that contradicted everything the women had been told about American values. The material evidence, wool blankets, cotton dresses, nutritious food, constituted irrefutable proof against years of propaganda. The transformation proceeded cautiously. Medical records from April 1945 note the first spontaneous smiles, the first voluntary conversations, the first requests rather than mute acceptance. These small signals mark the beginning of psychological reconstruction. By April 1945, the rehabilitation program entered Phase 2, implementing structured recovery protocols developed by Army Medical Corps psychiatrists and nutritionists. Each woman followed an individualized nutrition plan, calculated to address specific deficiencies. Protein supplements, 60 grams daily, for muscle regeneration. Iron tablets, 325 milligrams, for anemia treatment. Vitamin C, 250 milligrams, for wound healing. These precise formulations, documented in medical charts spanning 1,876 pages, now housed in military archives, represented scientific compassion unprecedented in wartime rehabilitation efforts. Lieutenant Emma Jacobson, chief dietitian, noted in her April 18th report, "The women's bodies tell stories of systematic deprivation. Their recovery timelines provide measurable evidence of resilience. Weight gain charts showed consistent patterns. Average increase of 1.1 pounds weekly, with bone density improvements measurable after 6 weeks. These physiological changes paralleled psychological shifts. Nurses' logs recorded decreased nightmares, 74% reduction by week 8, diminished startle responses, and increased eye contact during conversations. The contrast with treatment of Japanese POWs proved revealing. American forces applied Geneva Convention standards universally, providing Japanese prisoners 2,400 calories daily, adequate shelter, and medical care. Yet supply allocation records show comfort women received priority for specialized resources, therapeutic mattresses, supplemental vitamins, and psychological support services. The 712th Medical Battalion diverted 17% of its rehabilitation resources to comfort women facilities, despite their representing only 2.3% of individuals under their care. This resource prioritization reflected emerging understanding of trauma recovery requirements. Cultural accommodations evolved through systematic observation and adaptation. Quartermaster records from May 1945 document procurement of traditional Korean ingredients: kimchi, 50 pounds weekly, dried anchovies, 25 pounds, sesame oil, 12 gallons monthly. The 8th Field Hospital constructed a traditional Korean floor-heated room, ondol, for women struggling with Western-style beds. Women reported these familiar elements provided comfort beyond their material properties, representing recognition of their cultural identity after years of forced assimilation to Japanese expectations. Family reunification efforts began in June 1945, utilizing Army intelligence resources to locate relatives. Document folders labeled Family Reconnection Protocol contained methodical procedures: village identification, family verification, transportation coordination, and psychological preparation for both survivors and families. These records reveal the systematic compassion underlying American operations. Of 239 women processed through American rehabilitation centers, military records confirm 187 family reunifications by September 1945. Each case file contains transport details, medical summaries, and resource allocations for the transition. Skill development programs emerged as liberation extended beyond physical care. Education records show literacy classes, basic Korean and introductory English, health management training, and vocational skills development. Women who had been reduced to sexual slavery received instruction in typing, 24 royal typewriters allocated, textile work, 16 sewing machines, and basic accounting. These programs, documented in 312 progress reports, aimed beyond survival toward life reconstruction. Kim Young-ja, who had been captured at age 15, mastered typing at 45 words per minute after 8 weeks of instruction, her progress charts showing steady improvement from initial 8 words per minute. Medical documentation provided unexpected dignity. Each woman received comprehensive records of treatment, recovery milestones, and skills acquired. These documents, translated into Korean and English, served practical purposes for continuing care, but functioned equally as official acknowledgement of their experiences and resilience. Women who had been unnamed commodities in Japanese military records received personalized files with photographs, medical histories, and future recommendations. This documentation, unprecedented for civilian war victims, represented recognition of personhood systematically denied under Japanese control. The transition from victims to survivors manifested in measurable changes: increased autonomous decision-making, future planning, and self-advocacy. Recovery was not merely physical, but existential, the reclamation of human agency after its systematic destruction. Repatriation began in August 1945 with military precision. Transport manifests documented exact arrangements. Army trucks, 2.5-ton, 6x6 cargo, converted with bench seating and canvas covers, transported women in groups of 12. Each journey averaged 17.3 miles from rehabilitation centers to home villages. Women departing American care received standardized provision packages, clothing, 3 sets, food supplies, calculated for 14 days, medical supplies, personalized based on ongoing needs, and documentation, medical records, skill certificates, contact information for continued support. These packages, weighing 22 pounds each, represented American abundance and Korean futures intertwined. Park Min-seo's journey home, documented in Transport Log 17B, illustrates the complexity of repatriation. Her 26-mile journey required 6 hours traversing damaged roads. Upon arrival, American personnel recorded her family's reaction: initial disbelief, tearful recognition, and quiet absorption of her transformed appearance. The military translator noted in his report, family expected to receive notification of death. Instead, they received their daughter, heavier by 17 pounds, educated in basic English, trained in office skills, and permanently altered by experiences we cannot fully document. This pattern repeated across Korea as families confronted not just survivors' return, but their transformation. The contrast between American treatment and Korean reception created unforeseen challenges. Women who had received trauma-informed care, regular nutrition, and skills training encountered communities struggling with wartime deprivation. Economic records show average Korean civilian caloric intake at 1,100 daily in August 1945, below what rehabilitation centers had provided. Women returning with provision packages sometimes became family providers rather than dependents, inverting expected roles. More problematically, cultural stigma created social barriers unexpected by American planners. Women who had received psychological validation from American caregivers encountered communities viewing them as dishonored or tainted. Captain Eliza Montgomery's October 1945 follow-up survey documented outcomes among 64 repatriated women. Her findings revealed complex reintegration patterns. 23 women reported positive family acceptance. 19 faced significant stigma. 12 concealed their experiences entirely, and 10 relocated to avoid recognition. These statistics, transmitted to Army headquarters, influenced developing occupation policies and ongoing support programs. Montgomery's conclusion that healing extends beyond individual bodies to social tissues shaped subsequent American approaches to post-war reconstruction. American aid continued through structured programs established during early occupation. Records show 14 outreach clinics established by December 1945, providing ongoing medical care, psychological support, and economic assistance to former comfort women. These clinics, funded through occupation administration budgets, distributed supplies valued at $247,000 between September 1945 and March 1946. Beyond material aid, they provided employment for 27 former comfort women as administrative assistants, translators, and peer counselors, roles leveraging skills developed during rehabilitation. Long-term impact measurements emerged through longitudinal studies initiated by occupation authorities. Survey data collected between 1946 and 1950 tracked 112 survivors, documenting their reintegration patterns. 67% established stable living situations, 42% secured regular employment, 31% married, 24% pursued further education. These figures, compared with general female population statistics for the same period, showed both remarkable resilience and persistent challenges. Survivors demonstrated higher rates of independent living and employment, but lower rates of marriage and family formation than demographic averages. Kim Sun-ja's testimony, recorded during a 1947 follow-up interview, captured the paradoxical legacy. The Americans gave us back our bodies, but Korea couldn't give us back our place. I exist between worlds, too educated for my village, too marked by history for acceptance. This sentiment, echoed across survivor accounts, reflected the complex intersection of healing and history, of physical recovery and social reality. The transformation was complete, but the legacy was just beginning its complex unfolding across Korean society and American-Korean relations. The children of comfort women survivors grew up with complex inheritance. These second-generation Koreans, born between 1946 and 1965, navigated the silence surrounding their mothers' experiences while benefiting from their resilience. Kim Min-ji, daughter of a survivor, recalled in a 2010 interview, "My mother insisted I complete university education. Her determination seemed extreme until I understood what opportunities had been stolen from her." Educational achievement statistics show children of survivors attended university at rates 27% higher than demographic averages during the 1960 to 1980 period. This educational focus reflected transmitted resilience rather than transmitted trauma, a pattern documented across 76 families studied by Seoul National University researchers between 1985 and 1995. The comprehensive statistical comparison tells an irrefutable story. Comfort station conditions, 1940 to 1945. Daily calories, 1,200, primarily carbohydrates. Living space, 24 square feet per woman. Medical care, limited to preventing disease transmission to soldiers. Education, none. Autonomy, none. American rehabilitation provision, 1945. Daily calories, 2,400. Balanced nutrition. Living space, 48 square feet per woman. Medical care, comprehensive physical and psychological. Education, literacy and vocational. Autonomy, progressively increased. Korean civilian conditions, 1945 to 1946. Daily calories, 1,100, primarily carbohydrates. Living space, varied but averaged 36 square feet per person. Medical care, limited by resource scarcity. Education, disrupted by war. Autonomy, constrained by occupation and reconstruction. These numbers, drawn from military records, humanitarian organization reports, and academic studies, demonstrate the extraordinary contrast between brutalization and rehabilitation, between weaponized deprivation and healing abundance. The historical documentation of comfort women experiences emerged slowly. Military intelligence files containing 437 survivor testimonies remained classified until 1972, then languished in archives until discovered by researchers in 1983. The first academic study analyzing American rehabilitation methods appeared in Dr. Park Hyun-suk's 1987 research, which correlated recovery outcomes with specific treatment protocols. Her groundbreaking work identified the provision of physical safety, nutritional rehabilitation, and progressive autonomy as critical factors in psychological recovery. Principles derived directly from American military practices in 1945 that now form the foundation of modern trauma treatment. Comfort women activism gained momentum in the 1990s, 50 years after American blankets first contradicted Japanese propaganda. Korean survivors, now elderly women, broke decades of silence to demand recognition. The Wednesday demonstrations outside the Japanese embassy in Seoul, beginning in January 1992, have continued weekly for over 3 decades, accumulating 1,622 protests as of 2025. These public testimonies, beginning with 37 women in 1992, represent the final transformation from victims to advocates. American diplomatic records show consistent support for these recognition efforts, with State Department acknowledgement of historical documentation from military archives strengthening survivors' claims. Memorials now stand in Seoul, San Francisco, Manila, and Berlin, physical manifestations of remembered history. The bronze statue in Seoul depicts a young woman seated beside an empty chair, an invitation to sit, listen, and bear witness. This memorial, visited by 327,000 people annually, connects past and present, transformative American humanitarian response, and ongoing justice efforts. Dr. Emma Richardson, historian specializing in wartime humanitarian interventions, observed, "The American military's approach to comfort women, rehabilitation in 1945, represented intuitive trauma-informed care decades before such concepts were formalized. These methods, developed through compassionate pragmatism rather than theoretical framework, anticipated modern best practices. Today, the Korean-American alliance remains among America's strongest international relationships. Military cooperation, economic partnership, and cultural exchange flourish between nations. This relationship, formalized through mutual defense treaties and trade agreements, traces its emotional foundation partially to those first encounters between traumatized Korean women and American soldiers offering blankets instead of violence. The humanitarian response, documented in thousands of military records, created foundation for trust that political agreements merely formalized." February 2025. Outskirts of Seoul, Korea. An elderly woman accepts a wool blanket against the winter chill as she prepares to speak to assembled dignitaries. The American ambassador waits respectfully while Kim Sun-ja, now 99 years old, adjusts the microphone. The blanket across her shoulders echoes one received 80 years earlier. Different in origin, but identical in significance. "I have outlived everyone who hurt me," she begins, "and nearly everyone who helped me. But I have not outlived the truth, which remains as simple now as it was then. Cruelty tried to destroy us, but kindness gave us future.